getting at here. You know, and I guess my point is this. I mean, should we really be looking at the alcohol here?
Yes, of course we should be. I don't want to in any way minimize because what I talk about in Terrifying Love is that the cases that result in homicide have a much higher rate of alcohol problems than the cases that don't. And in my work, the cases that result in the most serious injuries have a higher percentage of cases where there's alcohol. So it's a very serious problem. We also find that women who might not abuse alcohol in non-violent relationships with a non-alcohol addicted partner, when they are in a relationship with a violent man who also has alcohol problems, have a higher risk of becoming alcoholic themselves. So it's a very serious problem that certainly has a relationship, but it's not a cause and effect, and you need to treat both problems at the same time.
My guest is Lenore Walker. The book Terrifying Love, Why Battered Women Kill and How Society Responds. The talk number is 457-9951. Now, if you have any questions for Lenore Walker or any input into this program at all, I suggest you get your calls in now. We have about half an hour left. We just made our way quickly through the first half of the program. 457-9951 for Lenore Walker.
The talk number on Addiction-Free Radio is 457-9951. If the lines are busy, keep trying. We'll do our best to get you on the air at 457-9951.
Hello, this is Carol Ann F. of the 12-Step Times. Our October-November issue is out. Read about taking good care of your inner child, recognizing codependency in songs, TV commercials, bumper stickers, and all around you. Learn how the society of the future will be a comfortable place like the society of 3,500 years ago. Find yourself in our cartoons and horoscopes. You'll find the 12-Step Times at your favorite bookstore or wherever recovering people congregate. Or call us at 860-6099. That's 860-6099.
Clearview of Colorado is a 16-bed secondary residential treatment program for chemically dependent and eating disordered women with special needs. It's an intensive treatment program in a casual southwestern setting, a place to seek and find serenity and strength. A provider of 24-hour care for women 18 years and older who meet the defined admission criteria. Clearview is operated in conjunction with St. Joseph's Hospital and affiliated with National Catholic Health Care Organizations. It's located in the community of Florence, Colorado, with a small-town intimacy, and is set magnificently in the Colorado mountains. It has a holistic environment that is ideal for spiritual, physical, and emotional recovery. Clearview is licensed by the Colorado Department of Health, Alcohol and Drug Division. As a community-based treatment center, Clearview of Colorado is a place of dignity and individual courage. Clearview of Colorado, a women's recovery center, area code 719-784-6337.
The talk number on Addiction-Free Radio is 457-9951. If the lines are busy, keep trying. We'll do our best to get you on the air at 457-9951.
You're with Jann Scott here this afternoon. We're talking with Lenore Walker, who is author of the book Terrifying Love, a new book out on Harper Row. It's Why Battered Women Kill and How Society Responds. You know, I noticed in your book, Lenore, you talked about learned helplessness. Could you discuss that a little bit?
Sure. Learned helplessness is a psychological construct that describes what happens to somebody when they have been subjected to what we call aversive stimuli or things that don't feel good, that hurt them, but not constantly. It's on a variable and a random schedule, so they can't predict when it's going to happen. Sometimes it happens and sometimes it does not. And if that occurs over a period of time, then people generally lose the ability to predict that what they do is going to be effective, is going to really have the desired result. And so they begin to narrow the kinds of responses that they make. They make more and more high probability responses that they'll be effective. And I use that term of my research looked at whether or not battered women develop learned helplessness from the abuse because they see it as random and variable, painful kinds of events for themselves. The research was originally done on animals by a psychologist named Martin Seligman and began sort of in the late 50s and 60s. And he has continued his work. He put animals in a laboratory and tried to see if he could make them very depressed. He administered random and variable shocks to them, and he found what he thought was depression. And the dogs would just sort of lie in a corner of the cage and not even try to escape even after he'd open up the door of the cage. Now, what he didn't realize until later on is that there are variable, the electricity in an electrical shock grid isn't even all through the grid. In some places it's more painful than others. And the dogs also lied in their own fecal matter. And what he realized eventually was that it wasn't just that the dogs would lie in their own mess, but that dog excrement or even human excrement is a good insulator from electrical shock. So they really were protecting themselves by what they did, but it appeared to be that they were helpless and passive. He then went on and did some other experiments with college students and demonstrated that it wasn't really, that learned helplessness was not really another form of depression, but was really a form of a post-traumatic stress disorder.
So,
used today.
This is kind of an answer, is it not, to the question of, I mean, if he's beating you, why don't you just leave him? I can't understand why she stays in that relationship.
That's right. That's part of an answer to that, Jan. But only a part, because the reality is that when a battered woman leaves her abusive partner, she is at greater risk to be killed, or for him to die, or for something really terrible.
When she leaves?
Happen.
That's right, you said that in your book, that things can really get rolling after the two people break up.
That's right. And so it's very scary to think about this, but given the fact, and that's my premise from the cases I've worked on, given the fact that we as a society don't really provide support systems for this woman, and we basically let her have to deal with this violent man on her own.
Well, in Colorado, we have the shelter systems. What are there, 30 shelters through the Colorado Coalition on Domestic Violence? And
not sure of the number, but we certainly do, and they're always filled, as you probably are aware, Jan. Women can only stay there for, usually it's about a month to 2 months, a period of time. And we don't have long-term kinds of care. We have some, and I mean, we're much better than we used to be. Of course, we don't have state funding. We do have an income tax checkoff, which means people, when they file their income tax returns, can check off to donate some money to the shelters, and that's how they have survived. But we're one of the few states that does not give money from our state treasury to assist in this area.
I'm talking with Lenore Walker, who is author of the book Terrifying Love. The talk number here is 457-9951. If you have any questions for her, any comments on today's program, you're certainly welcome to jump in on this show. We do have one line open here, 457-9951 for Lenore Walker. You know, Lenore, I read something else here in your book, too, that I found very curious. A lot of times, and I've worked in the addictions field for the past 14 years, I would hear women say, and other people say, that they had a problem with abusive men, that they would leave one abusive relationship and go into another because they were addicted to abusive men. And you seemed to me that you had something contrary to say to that here, and I was curious about it.
Right. I don't find that to be true. The research data, mine as well as other researchers in the field, suggests that only about 10% of battered women get involved with another batterer. Now, many people in the mental health field and perhaps in the addiction field think that we see every one of those 10% a lot of times. And so we think, because of our clinical experience, that generalizes to the whole population, but it doesn't. I also have been somewhat critical of the whole addiction model being expanded beyond chemical addictions. I certainly...
So you have a problem with process addictions, what are called process addictions, like codependency and
yes,
being addicted to people.
Well, let's talk about
sex and love.
codependency in a minute, because I got other things to say about that.
Right.
But I think that you can't compare addiction to alcohol and other kinds of drugs, where our bodies simply don't need that. There is nothing in our chemical makeup that needs any part of alcohol or other drugs. But we need food, we need sex, we need love.
We don't need sex.
Well, if we want to procreate as a race, we do.
I mean,
some of us
I don't need sex to make it onto tomorrow, but I do need food and I need air.
Right, and I mean, sexual expression should be, and for many people, it is an expression of love.
All right, well, go ahead.
At any rate, we do need those are certainly people engage in excess and have some dysfunctions with those kinds of functions, but it's not the same. The body needs it.
Mm-hmm.
As the chemical addiction. So to mix the two together, the two kinds of addictions together, I think misses the point for many people. And it's good. I like the model because it alerts people to the fact that they may have a problem, that they're not taking some control over their life. But as a therapist, I find that it doesn't go far enough.
Well, you and I tell you what, we should pick another day to argue about process addictions and substance addictions, because we could just, there's so many good things here that you have to say. I really find it interesting. And I'm not being critical either, but I'm very interested in what you had. I saw an ad today in the Colorado Daily, and it said, "Are you addicted to abusive relationships? Then, quote unquote, we can help." And I looked at that and I thought, okay. So would you just restate that again? How it's not addictive, so that I get it here. I understand how you approach it, because I liked what you had to say. I know what you said was most women that you see do not go back into abusive relationships.
That's correct. They may have another dysfunctional relationship that doesn't work out well, and I think if you don't have your act together, it's going to be real hard for you to get into positive relationship. But most women do not, and most men do not do continue to batter women, but they don't go. Most women don't go back into another addiction.
Most men do not continue to batter women?
Most men do.
Do?
They do, even from woman to woman to woman.
Mm-hmm.
But most women do not do that. Now, I want to just say one word about codependency, because I'm sure we'll argue about that too.
Oh, great.
But I just want to say it.
I'm resigned to not argue with you today. I read your book last night and I thought, oh my God, this person, you are, and I need to really say this, you are on the cutting edge of something here, and I know you've been doing this for a long time, but it's what you have to say in this book the country really needs to hear.
Well, thanks.
And a lot of people in this city need to read this, and if you're listening to the show today, if you're going to go and buy a book about, and you've heard me talk to lots of authors, this is one book that what you're going to read in here you will not see in a lot of other books, I promise you. Go ahead. You were about to say something.
What I wanted to say about codependency is that I have a lot of trouble. I've always had a lot of trouble with the term. And the reason I've had so much trouble with the term is that it's almost exclusively used to describe women who stay too long in a relationship with a man. It's not applied to men as often. It certainly is sometimes, but
you have to remember too that the women who seek help with codependency, we started with the feminist movement. Out of the feminist movement came the shelter movement. Out of the shelter movement has come the adult children of alcoholic movement, and all of this stuff around codependency, people looking at that. So the women are really the first people to have a look at addiction, and how has alcohol affected my life, and why am I?
And I certainly support that. I don't want my comments in no way should be interpreted as not being supportive of that.
Let's do this.
But it's not enough.
Okay. I'll grant you that. Can we go to the phones here? We'll talk with Nancy in Denver, I presume. Nancy, are you there?
Hi. Yes, I am here.
Do you have a question for Lenore?
Well, I first of all would like to say hi to Lenore. I'm a friend of Judy Sturm's, who has worked on a lot of battering relationship-type movements from Nebraska.
Well, hi, Nancy.
I was in an abusive relationship for 23 years. Mm-hmm. I have been divorced for 5 years now.
Mm-hmm. Good for you.
And I'm surprising myself with how I'm able to cope with everyday life's functions without someone else there to guide me by the hand, But
amazing how independent we can be, isn't it?
Yeah, but I still find myself, when you were talking about the addiction or the non-addiction, I still find myself, when he calls every so often on the phone, we have things we have to talk about. Yet one of our children was killed not too long ago.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's still, there are certain times when there is still that pull. Mm-hmm. That attraction, that whatever it was probably that attracted me to him 30 years ago, is still there. And it's something that I have to be aware of, and I have to fight it all the time. And I've heard other women, even after the divorce, you're right, the violence escalated when we were separated. I was never so afraid in my life as I was after I left him.
Right. Well, Nancy, I certainly have heard just what you're saying from many, many of the battered women that I have worked with. I don't see it as an addiction. What I see it as is that these men are often described as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. They have very loving, nurturing sides to their personality, and they have awful, mean sides and cruel sides to their personality.
They're very charming.
Absolutely. And what you really want, I'm sure, is not the mean, cruel, sadistic side, but the loving, nurturing person. And when you get a glimmer of that, or you get some memory of how nice it was when he was nice, and it's really, really good when it's good, that's what you yearn for, all of your dreams of what it could have been if the bad part drops out and the good part you're left with.
Yeah, and that was part of the anger that I had to work through, too, was letting go of the dreams, what I felt could have been. Right. If he just would have went into treatment, if he just would have stopped drinking, if.
Right, well, women fall in love with potential all the time.
Yeah, that's true. Well, thank you, Lenore. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Good to talk with you, Nancy.
Okay.
Thanks for your call, Nancy. 457-9951. We've got a line open here if you have any questions or comments for Lenore Walker. 457-9951 is the talk number. Lenore, you mentioned in your book that when people, that there is no way, once the battering starts happening, that people can resolve it, and that it's better to get divorced.
Yes, I think that I'm not sure I quite mentioned it that way, but that is indeed how most people at this time feel, that somehow when you've crossed the line, when a man has been willing to use violence to control a woman, and in most cases it's a power and control issue, that it's very difficult for that woman to ever feel safe again. And many men are unable. They may be able to stop it for a while. They may be able to stop their physical abuse or their sexual abuse, but not their psychological abuse. And the relationship simply, something happens. You've crossed a line that should not be crossed, and the relationship's never good again. Now, some women stay with it, as Nancy was saying, and other women feel that having him is better than having no one.
You bring in Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and the men acting that way, and I've talked to a lot of men that claim that they feel like something just came over me. I've heard people describe it in two different ways, at least men have to me, and one is it's when they had the first drink, they had a personality change and they became another person, or unless, of course, they were rageaholics, as John Bradshaw calls guys like that. Or the other is that they felt like another person or another being or presence had taken over their body. And I don't mean to get hokey here, but I've actually had, people have actually described that they felt that they were satanically or demonically possessed. Any thoughts on that?
I've heard men say the same thing, and I find it interesting. It is almost reminiscent of what we call a dissociative state in psychology, where you're into another level of consciousness, and you don't have full conscious awareness of what you're doing. You just kind of do it, almost like on automatic pilot. There's a debate in the field that with one group suggesting that men who batter women are simply an exaggeration of the normal stereotype of macho male kind of stereotype. And others suggest that there really are serious biochemical or psychological difficulties that these men have. In fact, I think the fact that these men do respond to treatment programs that teach them that they don't have this male entitlement, that they don't have to be in power, they don't have to control a woman all of the time, suggests to me that the men who say that are more willing to give up control of their own behavior, and that when they are willing to take back that control, all of that disappears, whether or not they stop their drinking.
457-9951 is the talk number here on Addiction Free Radio with Lenore Walker. That's what we have been taught. That's what men have been taught. We have been taught that women are property.
Yes.
That you have the right to hit women, that you need to keep control of a woman, that you need to find a woman that you can control.
Or you're a wimp.
What?
Or you're a wimp if you don't.
Well, absolutely. And I think the other thing that we do is that we lie about it. No, I wouldn't be that way. I mean, ever since the feminist movement, men are like, oh boy, they got us now. Now there's no way we can talk about it. In fact, there's a complete, there is what I would call is kind of a backwater to the feminist movement, and it's showing up in organizations in books like one of the guys, The Wising Up of American Men. And it was what we did as a result of the feminist movement was we tried to create ourselves as men who a guy would be a sensitive guy who would lean forward with moist eyes and speak softly, and finally the men, it's like it's not there, so now there's this whole rebellion against that, and then in reading your book, I have to tell the listeners this. The book was shocking in that you list time after time after time where men really beat the hell out of their wives. It's a horrible kind of a book. You couldn't show on television what you've written in this book. There is no way. Well, you mentioned the movie Burning Bed, and
right.
And it's. Are we really?
The surface.
Are we really in the closet with this?
Yes.
How many men are beating up their wives these days?
I just came back from a conference that the American Medical Association held on family violence, and former Surgeon General Coop was there, and people from the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, where they really keep track of the epidemiological numbers. And they claim that spouse abuse, or wife battering, or woman battering, which is how they label it, is the single most critical public health problem in the United States today. That more people die from and are seriously injured from men who beat women than any other form of death or injury. It is the single highest, higher than heart disease, higher than cancer, higher than AIDS, higher than any other accident.
Most of us lie about it. What I just finished reading here was 40% of married men beat their wives. And the other part that being a man and being around a lot of men, I've been in a lot of men's groups, you don't hear men talk about it. Men, it's like, and if they do talk about it, it's like, well, I mean, of course we have the right to do that. That's always unsaid.
And it's only about 10 years that women have been talking about it. And it was the feminist movement that really helped women have gathered the courage to be able to say, it's not my fault. I'm not a bad person, and I'm not a lousy wife or a lousy girlfriend. But he is beating me, and it's his problem.
We'll be back with Lenore Walker after these messages, and the phone number is 457-9951. We've got 10 minutes left in the program. If you have any questions or comments for her or about what we're talking about, give us a call here, 457-9951. Dr. Jonathan and Lori Weiss, authors of Recovery from Codependency, It's Never Too Late to Reclaim Your Childhood, present codependency recovery workshops. That's Friday and Saturday, October 13th and 14th at the Radisson Hotel, 1550 Court Place in Denver. For more information on codependency recovery workshops, call 1-800-282-0816. That's 1-800-282-0816. Codependency recovery workshops presented by Dr. Jonathan Weiss and Lori Weiss. Call 1-800-282-0816. Penny Pincher's Paradise, your Serenity shop. They have tapes, audio, videotapes, books, bumper stickers, t-shirts, sweatshirts, God boxes, teddy bears, posters, cards, chips, gifts, and more. Everything for the birthday or Christmas present. That's Penny Pincher's Paradise, 6766 North Lowell Boulevard in Denver, right across the street from the Shindig Bar.
The talk number on Addiction Free Radio is 457-9951. If the lines are busy, keep trying. We'll do our best to get you on the air at 457-9951.
We're back here on Addiction Free Radio. You're with Jann Scott this afternoon, talking with Lenore Walker. Her book is Terrifying Love, Why Battered Women Kill, and How Society Responds. The book is out on Harper Row. It's available at bookstores everywhere. Hardbound book. One of the things that I wanted to mention to you is in your stories here, these stories drag on and on and on, and finally the woman gets to the place where she blacks out almost in every story, and something, it's almost like an instinctive quality takes over, and she shoots her husband.
Well, that's true.
I mean, it's always the same. And you were saying...
Most women, when they do kill with a gun. Oftentimes it's a gun that, it's the man's gun. Sometimes he actually throws it at her and says, shoot me.
Or the guy's always laying it down on the nightstand as though she wouldn't kill him or something, or he had so much power.
There are a couple of them like that. Where, I mean, some of these men are just real arrogant. They truly believe that they have the right to tell her what to do, and that she's not going to do it.
Well, and she's been following what he's been doing. I mean, the sexual abuse that you describe in here, I mean, this is...
Pretty bad.
I know. This is... How do you how do you live with this? How do you work in? I was thinking about this. How do you work in this field and go into court testimony? I mean, you are obviously you are an expert court witness. You're testifying all over the country. How do you live with this yourself? I mean, how do you deal with this? This is pretty heavy stuff.
Well, certainly the training that I've had as a psychologist is very helpful. Psychologists, and particularly clinical psychologists, are trained. We sit and listen to people's pain all day long. And so we have a lot of training to try and block that pain from, absorbing into our own persona. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is that, I'm a social activist, and I try to keep as full a life as I can with a lot of people where violence doesn't take place. And as a social activist, I truly believe that we won't eradicate violence between men and women in our country without also eradicating sexism, the discrimination between men and women. And so my social activism is to work towards equality for women and men. And, that we have some successes and we have some backlash that we're dealing with. But that gives me lots of hope. And I guess I'm just an optimist. Testifying, Jan, is getting harder, I must say. In criminal cases, prosecutors are more nasty. It's like I come in with a reputation of being this big, bad, powerful expert, and they gun for me. I almost feel like I'm on trial. In several cases, recently I've had to hire my own lawyer to protect me. In one case in Arizona, the prosecutor asked the judge to put me in jail and hold me in contempt of court and put me in jail because I was trying to protect the client's rights. And I began to wonder who was on trial anyhow. Who were they so angry with? Why were they so angry with me? When I see the role of an expert is to be an educator, is to really teach the jury and the judge what I know to help them make their decisions about what the person's state of mind was at the time that they committed whatever act it is. And in these cases, of course, I testify in cases where I believe it was self-defense.
They just don't get it that the woman becomes so emotionally abused and physically abused that they something happens and then they stay in there so long, but something happens and they kill the man as a way of self-preservation. The judges don't get it. It's almost like they have a huge denial system. The reality and the starkness of what has happened to these women seem to bounce. They must think they're watching a movie or something.
It's really true. I write, one of the stories I write about in the book is the Donna Yaklish case, which is, of course, a local case in Pueblo, Colorado, of a woman who hired two young men to kill her police detective, narcotics detective husband. And I testified to the brutality. The press never picked up all of the brutality that this woman was subjected to, or the fact that this man had been under investigation for the murder of his first wife.
The doctor who, the woman who spent 2 years in jail to protect her child.
Yes, Elizabeth Morgan.
Okay. She was on her, not attorney, but her advocate was on Crossfire, and I noticed they had 3 men on Crossfire, which is on cable television, and she was being grilled. One woman, to talk in defense of the woman who had kept her child who went to prison instead of giving up her child.
Right.
And 3 men, and as the program wound down in the last 3 minutes, I just sat back and I watched these men verbally brutalize the advocate, and I thought, oh my God, the case it's proven right here. They don't have to say anything. I said I was really embarrassed as a guy. I thought, oh Jesus, I can't believe this.
Well, I get a lot of that from men and from women. I must tell you, women prosecutors, it's almost as though they have to hate me in order to cross-examine me.
I bet they have to sell
and
their
I
soul
understand
to
that this is their job to cross-examine me. But it's like they go at it with such venom, and that is distressing. It's real distressing because one would hope it would get easier.
You say in the opening chapters of your book that we live in a violent society brought on to us by television and advertising and all kinds of things.
I think so.
I think you're right. We're out of time. I'm glad we had a chance to visit again.
It's lovely as always, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Lenore Walker, she has a great sense of humor, too. I'm always put off by that. Terrifying Love, Why Battered Women Kill and How Society Responds. I'm Jann Scott. You've been listening to Addiction Free Radio. Stay tuned for the USA Radio Network News, followed by the Movie and Video Review Show with Buddy Kaczynski and Dan Fitzpatrick.
Fire, the all-new Fire 1150, KJIM, Inglewood. News from the USA Radio Network. I'm Chuck Roberts.
The National Transportation Board says examinations of the titanium fan blade found yesterday show that there was a pre-crash crack in the part that fell from a United DC-10 near Sioux City, Iowa in July. Experts believe the faulty fan blade could have caused the resulting crash that killed 112 people. Legislation making it a crime to burn the American flag is now on its way to President Bush. The U.S. House approved the measure today. USA's Mike Kellerman reports.
On a vote of 371 to 43, the House passed a law making it a crime to burn or deface the American flag. Penalties include up to 1 year in jail and a $1,000 fine. House Minority Leader Bob Michel argued that a constitutional amendment would have been a better way to go to overturn the Supreme Court ruling allowing flag burning.
If you really want to protect the flag, if you really want to do something more than make a gesture, then given the court's decision, you have to support, seems to me, our bipartisan constitutional amendment to save the flag.
Even though he prefers a constitutional amendment, President Bush is expected to sign the House bill. Mike Kellerman, USA Radio News, Washington.
President Bush says he is expecting an upcoming anti-drug summit in South America to bring what he calls a new level of international cooperation on the war on drugs. This is the USA Radio Network.
Announcing the Bible software program of tomorrow.
The Bible Library reduces word studies and scripture searches to just seconds without sacrificing a single citation or translation. It's a complete software reference collection, not just one Bible, but 9 Bibles, including the King James, American Standard, and NIV, with Vines and Strong's concordances, plus commentaries, dictionaries, sermon outlines, and English versions of the original Greek and Hebrew. Over 90,000 pages in all on one CD-ROM computer disc. The Bible Library. Word studies in just seconds. For a demonstration disc, call 1-800-962-8270. And for the price of postage and handling, you'll see the most powerful and comprehensive Bible software program available. The Bible Library. Call 1-800-962-8270.
It's the Bible software program of tomorrow.
And now with today's closing stock market report, here's USA's Robin Verhulst.
Prices closed lower in active trading on the New York Stock Exchange. The final volume, 160,120,000 shares. The market was down 16 cents. The New York Stock Exchange Index closed at 196.98, down 0.83. Advances 535, declines 895. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 2759.84, down 13.52. Today's most active issue was Centurior Energy, closed at 19 3/8 unchanged. This is Robin Verhulst at the New York Stock Exchange for the USA Radio Network.
According to the Navy, shells from the amphibious cargo ship USS El Paso today accidentally blasted the amphibious assault ship USS Iwo Jima. An officer was killed and a sailor was injured in the accident, which occurred during gunnery exercises about 80 miles southeast of the Norfolk Naval Station. This is USA Radio Network News.
Hi, this is veterinarian Dr. Jim Humphreys. If you live with pets, you will occasionally have a stain or an odor problem around the house. Well, if you do, there's a product you need. It's called Out. It's the best thing I've ever found for totally eliminating stains and odors from any water-safe surface. Now you can order Out, the odor eliminator and the stain remover, by calling 1-800-232-PETS. A 16-ounce concentrated bottle of both products costs only $11.95 plus shipping. Call today, 1-800-232-PETS.
2 Americans are among the recipients of the Nobel Prize for Physics. USA's Marla Maddox has more.
The 2 are Norman Ramsey of Harvard University and Hans de Melt of the University of Washington. They were cited for their work in understanding chemical bonds and for developing ways of studying matter without interference from atomic or molecular motion. They are joined by West German professor Wolfgang Paul. Marla Maddox, USA Radio News.
Anti-apartheid activists in South Africa expect a staggered release of 8 jailed black leaders during the next 2 weeks. The activists are demanding that Pretoria issue passports for the 8, whose release was announced 2 days ago. NASA says the satellites had confirmed that an ozone hole over the Antarctic equaled the size of a record-setting hole observed in 1987. The ozone layer protects the Earth's surface from radiation from the sun. I'm Chuck Roberts, and that's news from the USA Radio Network.
Denver's on fire. The all-new Fire 1150. KJIM, Inglewood.
Now it's time for our Lifestyles and Recreation segment here on Health Talk Radio, KJIM.
Hi, this is Buddy Kaczynski.
Along with Daniel Fitzpatrick, this is the Movie and Video Review Hour once again.
That's what we do. We review movies and videos.
On Fire Radio 1150. Telephone number is 457-9951. You guys want to give us a call?
If you dare to call us, that's the number you will call to offer a contrary opinion to us.
Anyway, what's on the docket today? Some 5 new video releases that came out. A couple of them have been out for a while, but we unfortunately had the chance to see a couple of them. And a few new movies. One of them, Fabulous Baker Boys. And Look Who's Talking.
Who was talking in that anyway?
I believe it was somebody, Bruce Willis, or Bruce the Shark from Jaws.
Do you think anybody will be looking to see who's talking in that coming to theaters?
Yeah, but we'll get into that just a little bit later.
Okay. Well, what do you know?
Anyway, first up.
Well, later we're going to have Wynn come back, and she's going to tell us what's going on at Major Video. Wynn, if you're listening to us right now, call in, would you? We're waiting for you.
Criminal Law. We'll talk about that first.
Okay, that was released when? When did it come out? 88 last year?
Yeah, but it just came out on videotape last week.
Right, and that's with Gary Oldman. Many people may know who he is, but we're predicting bigger than big things for Gary.
Bigger, biggest.
He's a Brit actor. And he's not one of those cold fish Brit actors, which is usually what we get over here on these shores. But he was in a Stephen Frears movie. He directed Dangerous Liaisons, but he did a film last year, 2 years ago, called Prick Up Your Ears, which was about the life and times of Joe Orton, a fairly well-known British playwright who lived and died in the 60s. And anyway, he had the lead role as Joe Orton. Incredibly good movie, not only well directed by Stephen Frears, but Gary Oldman's portrayal of Joe Orton had that internal logic and passion that really will bring a life like God to clay. In that role, and he does the same thing in this one. In fact, one of the things I'd like to
sheds his English accent so beautifully.
Sheds it. You
couldn't tell. I mean, if we didn't tell you'd go, well, who's this guy? He's rather good-looking, good actor. Who is he? I have no idea who he is.
Yeah.
He was also in Sid and Nancy a couple years. That was his breakthrough role,
right.
The portrayal
Sid
of the tempestuous relationship between Sid Vicious, the bass player from that punk band, Sex Pistols.
The rock and roll band of the 70s.
70s, yeah. That sort of opened the door for all this new wave music, hardcore and speed metal sort of stuff. Anyway, that was his breakthrough role. But in this movie, Criminal Law, he plays a defense attorney, and he plays it real well. Brings a real edge to that I haven't seen before, and just a basic few courtroom scenes that you've seen over and over, but his acting ability just sparks a little new life into it.
Yeah, actually, the courtroom scenes are so incidental to this movie, unlike most lawyer movies.
Right.
Really, it begins with a quick montage in the beginning. How he's very sharp-witted, very good lawyer. He
springs Kevin Bacon from a murder charge.
Gets Kevin Bacon out of the skillet.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon, who incidentally did a real good job in this too. I'd never seen. I'm so used to Footloose and Quicksilver and garbage like that he's in. He played like a really twisted, maniacal person, but not ranting, raving, frothing at the mouth, anything like that. He was very calm, but you could feel something boiling inside of him as the movie unraveled itself. And he did a really good job too. I was impressed with that.
Something was boiling in bacon. It really was.
But Joe Don Baker played a really stupid cop. I mean, he was really dumb, following up the investigation.
I really even know why his part was in that movie. I mean, I guess they needed some kind of foil for them to work against, but Gary Oldman was well, basically, without giving it away, Oldman plays a really slick lawyer, silver-tongued devil from Philadelphia, and he gets this guy off, and then it becomes evident that he's as guilty as sin, and the murders this guy creates
Kevin
violence.
Bacon, who is actually, I mean, he's a smart criminal. I mean,
that
he's
was
smarter
Dan
than
walking
your average
all over me, by the way.
criminal. He calls Gary Oldman and slowly reveals these hideous acts that he's created, and by letting his lawyer know these things he's done and certain secrets about him, they're inadmissible in court. And so this is like a little journey through Kevin Bacon's mind, and you're learning all about him and these incredibly horrible things that he's done. And Gary Oldham, after realizing how devastating what he did, letting this killer go free, tries to make amends. And
I think Kevin really benefited being around somebody of Mr. Oldham's talent, because it's like being on a good ball team or something. When there's other good people, they can raise your game.
Yeah, you raise with the the.
And I think this is
what
happened with Kevin, because one
Water
thing that
seats
impressed
its own
me.
level.